All right, so welcome everybody to Best Practices for Remote and Hybrid Teaching. If you want to get a copy of this slideshow for yourself, you can get it at the short link you see at the top of the screen. Also put the link in the chat for the slideshow if you want to go that way. I'll put that in the chat for you as well. So if you want a copy of that for yourself, there's a bunch of pictures and links and videos and stuff in here for you. So you can refer back to it whenever you like. And so, of course, welcome everybody. My name's Dan. I'm a technology integration specialist at NeoNet. Here's my email on slide number 2, dneeson@neonet.org. So if you have any questions after today's session, always feel free to shoot me an email. And of course, if you're here live with us, go ahead and sign in. There's a link for it on the second slide, or if you're here live with us as well, I put the link in the chat for you. As we're going through today, if you have any questions, of course, feel free to unmute yourself. I have that turned on, so you can unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can type into the chat as well. And here's our to-do list for today. So I was a high school social studies teacher for a few years, and this is how I would kind of set up my agenda for the day. I would do these like to-do lists, and at the end of the day, we check them off. These are our learning targets. So here's ours for today. We'll take a look at Google Meet and Zoom best practices, kind of just some good general guidelines for when you're doing some remote or hybrid learning with Google Meet or Zoom. We'll also talk about doing daily slides. We'll kind of see some templates, and we'll have some time for you guys to kind of play around and make one for yourself. Then we'll talk about making class notes available in Google Classroom or other places. Then we'll take a brief look at Jamboard and Whiteboard, other whiteboard activities. So you can use different whiteboards to do some interactive stuff during your video live track classes. Then we'll take a brief kind of mention at Pear Deck and Nearpod, and we'll kind of list off a few other best practices before we wrap up at the end of the hour. All right, any questions, of course, feel free to shout out. But with that said, let's go ahead and get rolling here. All right, so I put this little kind of like infographic together a while ago when it was kind of a toss-up between when schools are kind of deciding which tool to use. Some schools went down the Zoom route, some schools went down the Google Meet route, and it seems to be almost like a 50-50 split between different schools. So between these two platforms, I kind of put this little thing together here that talks about some of the best practices for using Google Meet or Zoom. So let's start on the Zoom side of things. Going down the left-hand side here, you kind of see just a few listed off items here. So first thing is you'll generally want to use the downloaded version of Zoom on PC or Mac. If you're using the web version or if you're using Zoom on a Chromebook, you lose out on a lot of features. A lot of things don't show up when you're using the pure web version. The way to get to the downloaded version of Zoom, I think I have a link to, oh no, I didn't. It's really easy. You can just search for Zoom download or zoom.us/download. This will get you the downloaded version of Zoom. That's the one you'll generally want to use. Again, you have more features that are available to you this way. Things like it's easier to make a recording when you have the downloaded version of Zoom. You have better control over the people in your meeting and when you have the downloaded version, things like that. So generally, it's a really good idea to have the downloaded version if you're on a PC or a Mac. Next thing is using a waiting room. So waiting rooms are a really helpful thing because it's essentially kind of like a filter that your students will have to go through in order to be able to get into the session. So it became kind of a meme, kind of a thing when we started doing remote learning last spring, and it kind of has been a thing on and off for a while now, where kids would just give out the Zoom link to their class out to their friends or put it on social media or things like that. Kids do dumb things, go figure, right? And what you can do with a waiting room is filter through your kids to make sure that they're your actual kids that come through. it's kind of difficult to show it how exactly how it works when we're using Zoom, but I took a couple of screenshots here. Everything for all the big security stuff in Zoom is going to be inside of that security menu at the bottom. You'll only see that when you're the host, but in there is where you can turn on this button for a waiting room. And again, the waiting room, you'll see it pop up above the participants menu, and you'll see the name of people in the waiting room. And you can even message them in there as well. So if you see a name you don't recognize, you can message them and say, who are you? Make your name one of my students. And if that student's not one of yours, you simply just don't admit them into the room. Okay. Another option you have when you are a Zoom host, you also have the ability to not allow students to rename themselves. That's also under the security menu. This one's just kind of a lumped in with a bunch of other ones here. So you can see under the security menu, you have allow participants to share screen, chat, rename themselves, unmute themselves, and start a video. So you can decide all those things whenever you like. You can turn these things on or off at any point during your Zoom. So generally, as a kind of a best practice, don't allow students to rename themselves unless they have a messed up name or they're using like a different account, or it's an anonymous name or something like that. That way they can come in and it'll just be their actual name. Presume that they're signing in with an associated school account. Next one here is only allow students to unmute themselves for discussions. So you might get a lot of kind of extra noise sometimes. Sometimes kids forget to push the mute button when it's not their turn to talk, or there's some background noise or their dog's barking or whatever it is. So you can easily just flip this one switch here called unmute themselves, and you keep that. If you keep that turned on, they won't be able to turn on their microphones. Okay, and again, the same idea kind of applies, where you're able to turn this function on or off whenever you like. Now, if you want to pick on a student to answer a question that you throw at them, you can keep this option turned off, and then in the participants menu, you can unmute that one student yourself, and then remute them again once they're finished. Or if they raise their hand, you can also do that. All right. Another one is a little bit different here. So only allow annotating on shared content for whiteboarding or collaboration. So Zoom has this really cool feature where all the participants can write on the host's screen or whoever's screen sharing. And this is really nice if you want to do some collaboration or some like whiteboard, if you have like a whiteboard activity or something like that. And you can turn on or off this option to allow them to annotate or draw on shared content. And so this is what it looks like here. So you can prevent students from writing on your screen while sharing. Again, if you're using the built-in whiteboard, you'll probably just want to keep this one turned on if you're going to use the built-in Zoom whiteboard. But the way to change the setting is by turning off this option in your Zoom settings. So let me show you how to get there. So you go to your Zoom dashboard. So Zoom is zoom.us. It's not zoom.com, zoom.us. And let's go ahead and get signed in here. And we'll get all signed in. And depending on your school, you may have a Google sign in, or you may have a dedicated username and password. Our Neonet uses our Google sign in for this, so I just sign in this way. And we're going to go under settings on the left-hand side. And there's a bunch of settings in here. There's a ton of them. So, I mean, once this loads for me here, you can see that there's a bunch of a ton of these options that are in here. So I'm not going to try to find it by myself. You can use just Control F or Command F on your keyboard. And then that opens up the little search box. And if I search for annotation or annotate, or the first several letters, it'll drop me to that section. And this is what I'm looking for here. Annotation allows hosts and participants to use annotation tools to add information to shared screens. So if this one's turned off, students will not be able to draw on your screen unless you turn that on for them. So by default, that'll be turned off. Okay. So if you ever recognize, if you are a Zoom user, and you are like just doing some teaching, you're sharing your slideshow or whatever it is, and you just notice like little lines or something showing up on your screen, you're like, what is that? That's what that is. Your annotation's on, and a student, inadvertently or not, has been drawing little things on your screen. All right. So you can find that. Again, I mean, if you're a Zoom user, if your school uses Zoom, it's a good idea to go look through this settings page and see a few things. If you want to change anything in here, again, there's a bunch of different settings in here. If your school has like the paid for Zoom license, they may have organized or set some like settings for you ahead of time. So just be aware of that. Some things you won't be able to change, some things you will, depending on your account. Any questions on that so far? That was kind of a lot of information thrown at you pretty quick. Any questions? Doing okay? Brain's not exploding too bad, hopefully. All right. All right, so now let's kind of shift gears and go to the other side of this little graphic here, and we'll go to the Google Meet side of things here. So on the right-hand side, our first one here is use the Google Meet link in Google Classroom. So this is a really nice thing that Google Classroom does for you. So if your school is a big Google school, of course, you can use the associated Google Meet link that comes up in your Google Classroom. Now, the nice thing about this is there's some settings that it does for you automatically. So you don't have to fiddle with setting up the details of the Google Meet and scheduling it and changing the security settings and all that stuff. So instead, all we have to do is right below the name of our class on the stream page here, we'll have this Meet Link button, and we can just click on Generate Meet Link, and we give this a click. And we'll go ahead and say save. We can also decide whether or not to have this be visible to students or not. So if you're ready and you're ready for students to come in and join you, you can have this turned on and click on save. If you want to draw some extra attention to it, you can put in an announcement here in the stream. So you can click, and say, use the Meet link above to join our class. And we'll say, every day from 9 to 9:45 a.m. Man, PM classes, that would stink. All right, so we'll post that in there. So you can also, draw their attention to it with a little stream thing in there as well. And when students come in, this link will just be sitting here waiting for them, and they can hop in the class. Now, there's a couple other things I'll mention on that point here. It's a really good idea to, as soon as you generate that Meet link, immediately join into the Meet or the Google Classroom link to establish yourself as the host. And you'll generally always want to be the first one in and the last one out of your Google Meets. That kind of stops students from being able to go in there without you. So when you're the first one in, that you kind of open the door for them so everybody can come in. And then once everybody leaves, all your students leave, you're the last one out, you're kind of closing the door for them. If you jump into the Google Meet, students come in, some students leave, maybe there's one or two left, then you leave, leaving a couple in the room. Others will still be able to join back in later, and those same students will be able to come in and out. All right, so it's always good to be the first one in, last one out of those Google Meets. All right. It's always a good idea as well to keep Google Meet in view on a second monitor or a second window when you're screen sharing. The way Google Meet works when you're screen sharing is different than Zoom. So it's hard to see the controls and see your chat and all those other things when you're screen sharing in Google Meet. We'll actually have a video in just a little bit talking about that point of how you can do that in a couple of different ways. So we'll talk about that more in just a second. And then finally, just make sure that students are joining Google Meet with their school accounts. Big reason is they won't run into any issues when they go in to join into the Google Meet. So I'm going to go ahead and join this Google Meet right here and just kind of explain what I'm talking about here. And let me go ahead and jump in as this loads for me. I'll just turn off these things because I don't need them. And so when we join this Google Meet here, when students are going to join with their school accounts, they can just jump right in. You don't have to let them in. They can just come in. Now, if you want to change that, you can go to this little security icon down in the bottom left. And we have this little flip switch, this first one here, that's called quick access. So when this is turned off, everyone who isn't invited must ask to join, including people in your organization. So when this is on, students can simply join into the session. You don't have to let them in. They can just join in as long as you're there, as long as they're signed in with their school account. If this is turned off like that, then students will, along with anybody else, will have to basically knock, what they call it. They'll have to knock to ask to join into the session, and then you'll be able to let them in. A little pop-up will come up asking if you'd like to let this person in, and you'll see their name. Okay, so you can adjust that whenever you'd like. Okay, all right. Any questions on that part so far? Any questions on that part so far? Okay. So now we'll watch a quick little video. This is from Eric Kurtz. So he put together this really helpful video about 3 ways to see your students when you're presenting in Google Meet. So even if you don't have a second monitor, this is really helpful. So this is going to talk about how you can still see the chat, still see your students when you are screen sharing in Google Meet. So I'm going to share this video with you guys so we can watch it together real quick. And we'll come back together as a group after this video.
Hey, this is Eric, and this video is one in a series of videos on Google Meet. This video covers 3 ways to see your students when you're presenting your screen in Google Meet. One of the great features of Google Meet is the ability to share your screen with your students or other meeting participants. This allows you to present a slideshow, navigate a website, work out a math problem, show a video, or provide any sort of instruction. The problem is, once you share your screen to begin presenting, all you can see is, well, what you're presenting, and not your students or audience anymore. This can make it difficult to stay connected to your students, to assess their understanding, to monitor their engagement, and to take questions. Thankfully, there are several options for how you can stay connected with your students while presenting your screen. In this video, we'll take a look at 3 of those ideas. The first option is hands down the best choice if you can do it, which is to attach a second monitor to your computer or laptop. This allows you to have the Google Meet with all of your students displaying on one monitor, while the content you're presenting to the students is on a completely different monitor. For example, when I'm presenting, I will often have 2 extra monitors plugged in so I can have the Google Meet on one monitor, what I'm presenting on a second monitor, and my notes on a third monitor. If you have a desktop computer, you'll have to check the back to see if you have connections for more than one monitor. However, if you're using a laptop, you should almost certainly have a port to connect a separate screen. Most all laptops have a VGA port or an HDMI port that we normally use to connect a projector, but can just as easily be used to hook up a second monitor. If you don't have one of those ports, your laptop may have a USB-C connection, which can also be used for a second monitor. However, you may need an adapter like this USB-C to HDMI adapter that I use with my Chromebook. Once you have plugged in the second monitor, you might need to adjust the settings on your computer to use this display properly. Depending upon your type of computer, you'll want to choose whatever setting will let you extend your desktop. You want to uncheck any option for cloning or mirroring your desktop, since that would just show the same thing on both screens. In my Google Meet, I can now present what is on the other monitor to my students. First, I will separate my Google Meet tab from the rest of the tabs that have the content that I want to present. Next, I will now drag those tabs with the content over to my other monitor. Next, I'll click the Present Now button down in the bottom right-hand corner. If I choose your entire screen, I'll now need to pick the monitor that has the content that I want to show. Or, if I pick a window, then I need to select the window that I dragged over to the other monitor with all of my content. Either way, I'll click Share to start presenting. And that's it. I can now see my students on one of my monitors while the content I'm presenting to them is on the other monitor. So that's option number 1. But what if you don't have a second monitor to attach to your computer? Well, let's look at option 2, which is logging into the Meet a second time with a different device. The idea behind this is that Google Meet allows you to log into your own meeting more than one time. You can use another laptop or a Chromebook or an iPad or your smartphone to log into the Meet a second time. You can use your first device to present your screen and do all of your teaching, but then you can use your second device to see your students. Here's how it works. So I would use my main computer to start up the Meet as normal. Then I can use my laptop or tablet or phone to join the same Meet with my same account. You can get the 10-letter code by clicking on the meeting details in the bottom left-hand corner, or you can email the link to yourself or click on the link in Google Classroom or wherever else you want to share it. Now, once I connect with my second device, I'm going to want to mute my microphone on that device so that both devices do not pick up my voice and cause an echo. I can do that with the mute microphone button at the bottom of the screen. In addition, I may want to turn off the webcam on the second device since I'm just using it to see my students. If I am using a laptop or a Chromebook for this purpose, I can also use the Google Meet Grid View extension to see all of my students at once on that device. The Grid View extension is covered in detail in another video in this series. I can now use the Present Now button on my main computer to present my screen and teach while I'm able to view all of my students on my second device. So that is option number 2. But what if you don't have a second device? Well, we still have option number 3. If you only have one device and only have one monitor, you can overlay your presentation window with your Google Meet window on your one monitor. Here's how that works. So I'll start up my Google Meet as normal, and then I'll load up my content that I want to present into its own tabs. I will now click and drag my Google Meet tab so it's pulled out into its own window. The trick now is going to be to make each window slightly different in size so I can click on each of them to jump back and forth between them, and so that I can still see the Google Meet chat panel while I'm presenting. So I'm going to select the window that has Google Meet, and I'm going to click on the chat icon in the top right-hand corner to open up the chat panel. I'll then grab the bottom of the window and drag it up just a little bit to make it a little shorter than normal. Next, I'm going to select the window that has my teaching content in it, and I'm going to resize it to make it just a little bit more narrow so that I can see the chat window behind it. Now back in my Google Meet, I can click the Present Now button and then choose a window, and then select the window that has my teaching content, and then finally click Share. Now the students will see what I'm presenting from this window, but I can see the chat panel in the background in case anyone asks a question. And I can quickly click back to the Meet window or back to the presentation and jump back and forth as needed. Of course, no matter what method you use, be sure to go back to your Google Meet screen when you're finished and press Stop Presenting when done. So those are 3 options for seeing your students when presenting your screen.
All right. Was everybody able to hear and see that video okay? All right. Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. All right. So, of course, in that video, he goes over 3 different options there. Of course, it kind of depends on what tools you kind of have at your disposal. But those are 3 good ways to be able to run your Google Meet. And honestly, some of those things you can also do kind of the same idea in if you use Zoom as well, if you don't have a second monitor. I'm using a second monitor right now off to my side, and it seriously is a lifesaver. So if you are teaching remotely completely, beg your school if you can get a second monitor, or if they offered you one, definitely take them up on it. It is very much worth it. All right. Any other questions as far as Google Meet or Zoom goes before we change gears into talking about daily slides? Any other things on the Google Meet slash Zoom side of things? Connie says we have a second monitor too. It is a huge lifesaver. It's a game changer for sure. All right. Any other questions on Meet or Zoom? All right, so let's go ahead and change gears here, and let's go into talking about daily slides. So daily slides, kind of like we see in the background here, are easy ways to be able to give students kind of an agenda in kind of a fun way. It's a good way to kind of introduce the class for the day or for the week. There's tons of templates you can find. Here on slide number 9 is a link for some templates. So if you open that up, this is just a Teachers Pay Teachers search. You can find a ton of these things for free, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. But there is an absolute ton that are available. And we'll look at some examples, and we'll look at how generally how you can make them and that sort of good stuff here. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of examples here. So this one, I honestly just went on Twitter and did a search for daily slides, and I found a ton of stuff as well. So I went on Teachers Pay Teachers and on Twitter, and you can find a bunch of good stuff. So this first one on the left here, so this is one from a teacher, and she has her daily slide available. And of course, you can kind of see, it might be a little bit small, but you can kind of see she has today's agenda. This is back from April, but there's a question of the day, an enrichment activity, some interactive life skill thing, a fitness activity, and a cooking activity there. So it has the agenda for the day in kind of a fun way. Might be able to tell this one's built in Google Slides. Same thing for the one on the right-hand side. This one's also built in Google Slides. You'll see most of these are going to be built into Google Slides because it's just so easy to make things in there. And it's an easy way to organize and explain what students can be expecting coming up in class. So this one on the right-hand side, this one is actually one in a series. You can kind of see the little slide deck over on the left-hand side of this picture. You can see the past few days as well in here. And this one's day 5. And again, there's some activities, there's some word work to do, and there's other items that has the whole kind of continued aesthetic every day. And students would come in and see what activity they're supposed to do that day. This one's another really good one. There's I found the link specifically to this template. Again, I just came across this on Twitter. But this one's another activity. It's kind of like a bulletin board daily slide. And so we have the learning plan, has a welcome message. It might also be some actual content in there as well. It has some reminders. So today is April 20th, and here's our whatever reminder messages we have. Here's what the reading activity is. Here's a motivational quote to get started. As you can kind of tell, these things are very open-ended. You can pretty much do whatever you want in these things. But this one here on slide 11, the link for the template is available for you guys there. And so this one's there, and you can check it out here. Once that loads for me, there it is. And so you can check that out if you like. And this one actually has a couple of slides to it. So if you want to check that out, that link for that one is on slide 11. And here's kind of another style. You might do some holiday themes or things like that. So again, this one's kind of simple though. It has just kind of a Christmassy background. Then in the middle, we just have our daily agenda. So complete bell work, we'll begin discussing X, Y, and Z, talking about what we're going to do in our Zoom class, what the learning objective for the day is. So again, these things are kind of very open-ended, but they're a good way to show students what to expect for the day. And especially at a time when they don't know what's going on, they don't know what to expect with, are we going to be in school? Are we going to be doing work from home? Are we doing a hybrid thing? Kids are kind of all over the place at this point. Here's another one. This one's kind of a simple one too. This one's kind of a Bitmoji class. You may have kind of heard that term thrown around here. And this one's kind of a simple one. Just has a little whiteboard on the wall, and you can do pop culture references too, just to kind of talk about stuff that's going on, kind of acknowledge current events, that sort of thing. And of course, so this one's talking about what to do today. So there's attendance and bell work, check your Google Classroom notifications, review syllabus, and then there's a quill.org diagnostic practice. Lots of teachers use Bitmoji. Obviously, lots of those examples that we saw had Bitmoji characters in there. This is a totally fun extra thing. This is nothing by any means super important, but it's a kind of a fun thing to do. If you want, you can create your own Bitmoji account. Easiest way to do it is to download the Bitmoji app on your phone, and then you can either sign in with a Snapchat login, or you can just sign in with an email. And that will get you in there, so you can create your little avatar, and then you can actually use the Bitmoji extension in the Chrome browser, and it gives you all the different poses and things. It's just little pictures, and you can just drag them right over into your daily slide activities. That was just a totally side, kind of goofy, fun thing that you can also do. More important stuff here is how to actually use daily slides. So like I said, most of the time you're going to use Google Slides to create a daily agenda. The reason is because it's really just easy to make a graphic in Google Slides, because you can move pictures around, you can order things. So one thing is on top of the other, things like that. It's easy to make like text boxes and shapes and things like that. So this can, of course, include homework reminders. It can be social emotional check-ins. That's a big thing, obviously. Normally, it's a good thing to check for, especially nowadays. An agenda for the day is probably the most common thing. Any class rules or expectations, any materials that they need, any student groups. So if you're going to do a student group activity for the day, you can lay out your teams on your daily slide, saying team 1 is these students, team 2 is these students, and so on. You will only need to make one daily slide file. You simply replace the content each day, or you can just make copies of the original slide and just keep making them over and over again. Then you can post the slide in your Google Classroom, put it on your class website, show it during a Zoom Meet call, email it to students, email it out to parents. You can even use it as a background in Zoom. So I have my kind of green lava lamp thing going on behind me. You can use your daily slide as your background, and if you ever want your students to look at the daily slide, you just move away from your camera and show them. You can even point at things if you need to, or if that's not working, cover your camera with your thumb. I'm just covering my camera with my thumb right now, and notice it's a completely still or kind of like blank image. I'm not in it at all until I remove my thumb. So you can have all that stuff kind of there. So let's kind of go into some examples of this stuff here. So I have an example in here for us. So I have this simple example I kind of just pulled from one of those templates I found. And here's my daily slide once it loads up for me. And this will be just kind of a pretty simple way to use a slide. So, here's our Monday slide, for example, and here's our warm up and answer the 3-question bell ringer, and here's our agenda for the day. Here's the stuff you're going to need, any announcements, all that stuff. Again, you can really put whatever you want on here. Now, of course, there's lots of different things that you can do. So if, for example, I want to make this available to my students over in Google Classroom, all you have to do is go and post this over in our classroom, just like a normal item. So we can go over into our classroom here, and probably the easiest thing to do is put it into the classwork tab. So I'm going to go over into my classroom here, go into the classwork tab. And I already made a topic here for myself called Daily Agenda. And from in here, I'll go ahead and just post a material. And I'll just call this Daily Agenda. And then maybe in the description, I'll say, click below for our daily agenda. I'll go ahead and add this thing in from my Google Drive. Of course, this daily slide is just sitting in my Google Drive for me. There it is. Go ahead and drop that in there. Of course, I can decide which classrooms this is going to go to. So if I teach the same prep to different groups of students, I can do that. Decide which students are going to see it, of course. And then I'll put it under my daily agenda topic. And we'll go ahead and post that. And now, of course, it's sitting there available for students to see. And I'll just show you the student perspective real quick. Let's go ahead and jump in from the student side. So students come into classroom, beginning of the day. He knows, maybe it's 8:45 or their class starts at 9 o'clock or something. And he comes in, he'll go into our Google Classroom. He already knows, okay, I'm supposed to use the Google Meet link above to join at 9 o'clock. We'll join in about 10 minutes or so. And then we see, oh, here's my daily agenda. Okay, this can be always just stuck at the top of this page, so they never have to go anywhere else to see it. And they can see, okay, what's going on today? All right, here's our daily agenda that we're going to be doing. Pretty easy, right? So he sees, okay, I need my computer notebook and my textbook today. There's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a warm up. Cool. And oh yeah, my project's due. Pretty easy. Now, the cool thing you can also do, you won't have to go in and remake this this slide over and over again. You just update it each day. So this was Monday originally. I'll just change this to Tuesday. And then maybe we'll have a maybe we have a think, pair, share activity. Then we'll have whatever other changes that we do. And again, let's just kind of flash forward to the next day for the student. He comes on Tuesday morning, he comes in, clicks on his daily agenda. It's the same link for him, and the process is exactly the same for the student. He comes in and clicks on his daily slide link that he does every day. And okay, here's my daily slide. Now I see all this stuff from Tuesday. It's automatically updated. He doesn't have to go anywhere else. It's always going to be right there for him. Okay. All right, hopefully that's making sense. Now, the cool thing you can also do is, kind of like I said before, if you want to change your background, if you're a Zoom user, you can also add a custom background, by the way, if your school uses Google G Suite Enterprise, use the paid version of G Suite, then you can do your custom background in Google Meet, but not if your school does the free version of G Suite. But if you use the paid version of Google Meet or Zoom, you can do this. So let's say it's Tuesday and I want to change my background from this lava lamp thing I got going on. And I'm going to go ahead and do a picture of this slide. So I'm going to go up to the file menu of the slide. I'm going to go over to download, and then I'll take either JPEG or PNG. I'll do a PNG and download this picture. And now I'm going to go into my Zoom settings here. I'm going to open up Zoom. And when you have again, this is when you're using the downloaded version of Zoom, by the way. So when you're using the downloaded version of Zoom, you can click on the little button next to, I'm not sure if I can do this by showing you guys actually. Let's see if I can. Let's see if I can add some things here for you. There we go. And let's see if I can add background. There we go. So when we have this menu open, so that was under settings and then background and filters. We can click on this little plus button way on the right side, and we'll add an image. And we'll go find our picture. And now, hey, there we are. So if you kind of just look at me for a moment here, I'll even turn off my screen share. And so, of course, if you're just looking at me, you'll see that there is our schedule for the day. So if I kind of point at stuff, if you're able to hear me, so we can talk about our warm-up activity. We can talk about it's like a weatherman. It's really hard to point at things, by the way. So we'll talk about our agenda, and then we'll talk about the things that we need. Then we talk about any announcements coming up. And of course, you can set that set that each day. And again, you just update that, download it, and make it your background for that session. And again, if I cover the screen with my thumb or a piece of paper, I have just like a little piece of paper with some tape on it. Or if you have like one of those webcam cover things, you can cover it up so it's nice and easy for students to see this background. so you can kind of show that activity as well. Show that daily slide rather. All right, let me jump back in here again. Okay. And let me go back here. Okay. All right. Any other questions on as far as daily slides go? Any other questions on that point? Doing good? Cool. All right. I'm going to go back to my groovy lava lamp here. There we go. All right. So one more thing I want to show before we'll take a quick little break. And depending on time, we'll take a quick little break and then we'll kind of go into our last section before we call it a session here. This video here, in the interest of times, we'll just save ourselves a couple of minutes. This video, I just go over talking about how to make notes available to students in a very easy way. Basically, what you're doing is putting all your class notes into a Google Drive folder and then posting that Google Drive folder over in Google Classroom so that students can just always go to that folder and see all the notes for the day. You could also, again, put your daily agenda in there. You could also put, if you record your class meetings, you can also put those in there as well. All right. In the interest of time, I'll just kind of skip past this part though. All right. All right. So let's take a quick little 10-minute break. We'll come right back in 10 minutes here. And then we'll kind of come back together and just kind of do our little wrap up here. So in the next 10 minutes here, I'll have a little timer going. In the next 10 minutes, explore some daily slide templates or make your own. So I put a bunch of links in the slideshow. Again, if you need a copy of the slideshow, I'll put the link in the chat again there for you. And explore around, go check out some templates and start kind of playing with one that you like. And start thinking of how you can realistically use daily slides with your kids. If you have time, post your daily slide or some class notes in your Google Classroom or whatever LMS that you use, learning management system that is. All right, so let's go ahead and take a little 10 minutes. I'll have a little timer going in here. And then we'll come back together on the other side. Of course, if you have any questions, just let me know. All right. So let's come on back together, everybody. See, Heather put something in the chat here. She says, my co-teacher and I use a weekly look ahead for the students so they know what the whole week looks like. Also, place for their homework to be written down so they don't have to constantly ask about it. Absolutely. So where do you post that? Like, do you make it available in Google Classroom, or do you have a class website, or how do kids go and see it? Put it in Google Classroom. There you go. Awesome. So, all right, so the whole week in like a topic, and then you put all that stuff in there. Yeah, absolutely. Thinking ahead like that and just making stuff nice and clear and organized, setting those expectations, that can go a really long way. Just some of that stability. I mean, just like the psychological aspect of just the world being crazy right now, and just having some stability in a normal school day is a nice thing for sure. Okay, since we only have a couple of minutes left, I'm kind of just going to mention just a few things before we wrap up. Jamboard, of course, is Google's easy-to-use whiteboard tool, and works just super nicely with all your other Google things. You can find it in the Google Meet. You find it in Google Meet, in the Waffle, or if you go to jam.new, just type that into your address bar, it'll make a brand new Jamboard for you. All of them are auto-saved. They'll be saved just like everything else into your Google Drive. Okay. Here on slide number 19, there's some links I left for you guys for examples of Jamboard activities that are there. It's just a quick Google search just led me to 36 different Jamboard activities. 5 seconds of Googling, you can find a ton of these example activities to check out. So there's always a lot in there to do. If you're new to Jamboard, I made this video. It's on slide number 20. It's about a 20-minute long video where I just go over how to use Jamboard, give you a couple of activity ideas. Of course, we don't have time to look at it today here together, but of course you can just watch this video. Again, it's linked on slide number 20 for you as well. Okay, if you are a Zoom user, you of course have the built-in whiteboard. So when you click that green share screen button, this picture on the right side here will pop up, and then you can choose that option called whiteboard. Then you just have a big blank whiteboard that you can draw on. Now, here's another little note for you. Students will only be able to draw on the whiteboard with you if they are using the downloaded version of Zoom or of Zoom on PC or a Mac. So if your school is like a Chromebook school and all the kids have Chromebooks, they're not going to be able to collaborate in Zoom's whiteboard. So if that's the case, maybe go and use Jamboard. You can use Jamboard with Zoom. You just screen share whatever window you have Zoom or Jamboard open in, and then you can share that way. Okay, you can control if students can draw on the built-in whiteboard in Zoom. You'll see this little toolbar here, there you can turn on or off if students are able to draw. That's under the security menu. Then in this bar lower than that, you can set all of your settings there. You can erase stuff. You can save it as a picture. So all that stuff is going to be there for you. Okay, real quick here, other whiteboard options, classroomscreen.com, Miro, and also joining with your smartphone where you actually just have a physical piece of paper. That third one there about the smartphone, that one's a video I made about how to do that. So if you want to check that out, you can. The other two are just links to those actual websites. If you want to use something else other than the built-in whiteboard in Zoom or Jamboard, there's a couple other options there for you. Pear Deck and Nearpod, unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go in too far into these here. I'm about to wrap up, so we don't go too far over here. But of course, if you're doing a lot of straight, direct instruction, take the time to learn either Pear Deck or Nearpod. Both are really great. Both have free tools that you can use, and they can really make your direct instruction where you just have your slideshows or PowerPoints, have those things be a lot more impactful, make them a lot more engaging. I'll show you guys in just a minute a couple videos and trainings that I made where you can learn more about those if you've never got some training on those. Victoria says in the chat here, whiteboard.fi is a cool site. Yeah, and that one's also it's kind of similar to Jamboard, and it has some cool stuff in there too. Absolutely. All right. Just something to mention here. on slide 24 here, here's a link to a recorded webinar that I did all about Pear Deck. So that link is there for you. I'll also have another live webinar coming up on January 28th from 3 to 4 p.m. all about Nearpod. So if you want to learn about those things, you can check those out. I do have recorded versions of those as well. Just another thing to note real quick here, students can join a Pear Deck or a Nearpod session late. So if they were late to join the Zoom meeting or the Google Meet, you can still display the join code and they can still join in late, even if they show up after you actually start. All right. Other stuff here in this slideshow here. Here's a video about how to take attendance online when doing a Zoom or Google Meet meeting. Again, these videos are just here available for you guys. Here's a couple more infographics about 10 ways to be a better online teacher. Unfortunately, we're kind of out of time here, so I won't keep you guys too much longer here. This video here on slide 29 talks about how to make individual mastery trackers. This one's not specific to remote learning or hybrid learning. It's still a good thing to know, but creating these individual mastery trackers with Google Forms. So you can check that out. That's just a quick little video. This video is a student guide to Google Meet. So if your students are having trouble using Google Meet or if they're new to it, this video talks all about how students can use Google Meet. For more information and resources, check out training.neonet.org. So that's our tech integrations, my website. So if you want to go in there and check out all the good stuff that we have on here. So we have this whole list of remote learning resources on here that you can kind of scroll through. There's a web of high distance and hybrid learning and a bunch more infographics and good stuff in there. We also have our PD on demand. This tab here has a bunch of the recorded webinars and trainings that I've done. So all these are available. These are all free, so you can come here and check these out. And you can also earn CEUs or graduate credit as well. So all this stuff will be here for you. Here's an interactive training about Nearpod, and there's one in here somewhere for Pear Deck as well. All right, here's the upcoming sessions we have coming up over the next few weeks. So if you want to check any of those out, again, the link is here on slide number 32 for you. If you're interested in earning graduate credit from coming to this session, here's all the information about that. If you have any questions about that stuff, just let me know. But that will pretty much bring us down to the end here. Sorry for keeping you 4 minutes over. But thanks so much for joining us today here for best practices for remote and hybrid learning. Of course, you can get the slideshow for today at the short link you see at the top of the screen, bit.ly/teach114. So you can get yourself a copy of the slideshow and get all the links and videos and all the good stuff that's in there. Of course, if you have any more questions, feel free to shoot me an email at dneeson@neonet.org. If you're here live with us, I'll put the link to the sign-in page in the chat again if you're here live with us. If you're watching this as a recording, of course, you don't have to worry about that. And on the last slide is a link for a quick survey if you're so inclined. All right, but that will pretty much bring us down to the end. If anybody is here live with us and you have any more questions, feel free to shout out. And with that said, thanks for coming. Remember to wash your hands, wear a mask, and all that fun stuff. And if you can get the vaccine, by God, get it. Stay healthy, everybody. Stay safe. I'll talk to you next time.